Hello everyone, and welcome to The Man Behind the Curtain. I'm Randy Young, the guy in the red shoes, and I've been in the video production business my entire career, and it's taken me around the world a few times. But more importantly, I've had the opportunity to work with some of the most creative people in television, and boy do they have stories to tell about the business and the people who make it happen. We've always been told, ignore the man behind the curtain, but you can talk to me. Okay, let's get started. I'm sitting here with a very, very good old friend. Many of you watching probably know him. It's Rob Pushkin. And I think he just came from the show. Rob?
Hi, Randy. How you doing?
Hey, you got your headset on still.
Oh, I keep forgetting to take this thing off.
Take it off because
I'll take it off for you.
Nobody's going to listen to you that in. So how you been? I haven't seen you for a while. You been good?
I've been good.
Been busy?
Been busy busy enough.
Yeah.
Trying to slow down a little bit. Can't do 280 days a year on the road anymore.
No,
so
I don't know. Why would you want to?
I've got 2 kids in college. That's why.
That's a good enough reason.
And so I'm being a little more selective in taking jobs, but I'm working enough to keep myself happy and keep my wife happy because I'm on the road.
And there you go. All right. Well, speaking of on the road and working, and I ask this question of everybody, how did you get started? Where did you start?
Where did I start? Well, I guess it would start back into college. I was a mass comm major, film and television.
Right.
And after about 2 years of doing film and television, I just was missing something. And what I really was missing was the spontaneity of a live audience. So a friend of mine was an actor, and he was doing a show in the Black Box Theater at school and said, we need somebody to light it. And I said, well, I know about TV and film lighting. I don't know much about theatrical lighting. Well, I learned fast. And I then, so I ended up coming out with a minor in theater, and I was going to be a lighting designer. And started doing that, and then that eventually I was calling my own shows, all my cues, and running the boards myself.
Sure.
So I decided, let me try to stage manage. So I got hooked up with a pre-Broadway tryout of a show that unfortunately didn't make it as a PA.
Yeah.
But I made a lot of nice connections, and through that I ended up getting my equity card and started doing children's theater and stock and off-Broadway. I mean, really off-Broadway, like in the Bronx.
In the Bronx off-Broadway.
But I was doing the theater, and then a friend of mine who I'd worked on this pre-Broadway tryout called me one day and said, look, I need a favor. I'm rehearsing this show, and I can't read plans. Could you come down and tape out the floor for me and stuff?
Sure.
So I came down. I said, what kind of show is this? He said, it's for the phone company. And I said, for the phone company? He said, yeah. I said, you're going to have dancing telephones? And he looked at me straight in the face and said, yep.
Yes.
So I was down there, and I decided to stick around. He was rehearsing a big cast down there, and I found out it was for a teleconference, which was going to be one of the largest teleconferences in the world. It was having to do with the AT&T divestiture.
Sure.
And one day the producers came in. They were from Chicago. We were rehearsing in New York. And they were talking with the designer and everything. And the designer said, well, who's calling the show for you? He said, well, it's the TV people. And he said, no, like the sound, the lights, the flies. I mean, you need a theatrical stage manager. And I was there, helping out, and they saw I taped the floor and everything. And one of the producers came over and said, can you do this? And I said, sure. So I've suddenly became the stage manager on the show. And it was funny because this is an old story that probably everyone's heard, but I'll tell it again. They said, how much do you want? And I said, wow. I mean, this is the phone company. I was making $112 doing, children's theater or
Right.
stock theater, living in people's basements. And I was bold. I said 300. They said fine. So at the end of the week, I got, my check. I passed out the ones to the cast, and I looked down, and it was $2,100. When I said $300, I knew nothing from day rates. I meant a week.
We're talking a week.
So I just, it was all of a sudden it clicked. It's like, wait a minute, they're paying me $300 a day, $35 per diem. I don't have to sleep in somebody's kid's bedroom in, Hyannis or something. They're giving me my own room. Art, money, and as they say, the rest is history.
You never turn back.
I never turn back.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I know the guys who produced that show.
I know somebody who was on that was working with me.
Yeah.
So,
like I say, we go back a long ways. So, as you've gone through the business and you've met people and you've worked with people, and now you've got all this experience coming from humble beginnings and walking into there. Somebody calls you today and you agree, yeah, sure, I'm available to do the show. What's your next step? What do you do next?
well, once I find out, I try to get some information up front. First off, is this a hold? Is this a commitment?
Mm-hmm.
What's the venue? How many deck managers do I have? So I try to find out as much, but the problem these days is nobody knows. I mean, people put you on hold, and you're sitting on hold, and you don't hear back from them, and then you call them 3 months later and say, oh yeah, that show went away, or yeah, we're going in a different direction.
Right.
So I try to find out as much information as I can up front, and I store that and go on to whatever I'm working on until it's time to really get into the show.
So when you really get into it, what do you dig into first?
I like to first off see plans. I like to see what I'm going to be dealing with the stage. I like to see some creative so I know what we're doing. As you well know, the industry every 10 to 15 years turns itself over, and now we're in another look. The days of the singing, dancing, book shows, long gone. Long gone. But, there's less and less creative in the sense of talent and more creative in the sense of design and artwork,
Right.
building walls and figuring out what we're going to put on the wall and where we want to punch this and how this is going to work for the client. So I like to find that stuff up first. I like to see the schedule, and on-site is always nice to know what's going on. Run a show I don't even bother asking for anymore because I'll be lucky if I get to run a show when it's on site. So, but those
or
are
the day after it's over.
Yeah, exactly. On the plane, I'll do my final, cue sheet coming back.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I just, try to find out as much information as I can going in. And if I'm lucky enough to have, deck managers on the show, I try to forward them as much of the information as these days people are not as forthcoming because they don't know yet. It's all so last minute. I mean, used to have stuff, months in advance, and now I'm lucky if I get things, a week before a conference call, and it's great, and we sit down and go through the show, and it's like, okay, now I know what's going on.
Well, you mentioned creative, and you and I want to be as creative as I can be in a show. Sometimes it's so limiting.
Exactly.
Sometimes they take such control that they don't listen. So how do you deal with the conflict of trying to be creative, you're trying to manage and run a show effectively, on budget, on time?
It comes down to the trust factor. How much the producer trusts you and wants your opinion. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you work with producers that are real micromanagers and stuff, you have to hold back. You have to see what they want and try to, my joking line is always, my job is to prevent them from hurting themselves.
Oh, good point.
And then you have the other producers who have that same feeling that you had in theater, where it's a very collaborative art. And my input is wanted, my input is appreciated, and that's where I can be much more creative. Otherwise, I'm just executing, and yes, I'm trying to make it flawless, and yes, I'm trying to make all the pieces integrate completely, but it's much more fun when you're part of the team involvement, and work with a creative director and help build the project.
How do you manage the inevitable conflict there, the discussions, or perhaps, and I'm sure you've been in this situation, you can see where the train's going to come off the tracks, and maybe they're not seeing that far ahead. How do you deal with that issue? You've been there, done it before.
I know.
You've seen the train come off the tracks.
I've never been known not to open up my mouth. So it's just a matter of, I was looking ahead at this, and I just, what's your thoughts on it? Because, because I was thinking, you might have this problem, you might have, a situation. Do we have the right material, the right equipment, the right crew to handle this, or do we need to sort of simplify it? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's part of the collaborative effort.
When you get that chance.
Yeah, when you get the chance. Otherwise, they tell me what they want, and I do my damnedest to make it happen.
Do your job. So, crew, what's your feeling on managing anything from a 10-person crew on a small show to 100 people? We've all done that. How do you manage that?
Give them information. Let them be part of the process. Let them know what's going on. I mean, too many times you come in and you just don't have the opportunity. But when you get that opportunity, involve the crew. They're smart. I mean, whatever I do, I've said to, crew guys 100 times, how do you want me to call this? Oh, well, whatever you want. No, you're the one pushing the button. I can call it anything. I can do it, any way that you want. Mm-hmm. Tell me what you need to do your job.
How do you know when something's going wrong? How do you? Is it a gut feeling? Is it a sight? Is it a?
It's a lot of a gut feeling, and sometimes you can just, it's like playing chess. You have to anticipate.
Right.
And I, am able to sometimes look ahead and see, I see a problem coming up. Bring it to the producer's attention, or sometimes, it comes up so fast you don't have that opportunity, and my job is to, somehow make it work.
Well, that's when you get to good crews, people that you communicate with, that you've been open with, and you and I both know that a good crew is going to save your bacon every time.
I watch their back, they watch mine.
That's right. And when you see a problem, you bring it up and you manage it. You work the problem, work through it, and you inquire how to fix something or how to get something fixed. I think 99% of the time that is the best way to go.
I agree. I agree. I mean, everyone there, especially if you have, a top-notch crew, they're professionals. They've all been through it. Mm-hmm. They all have ideas. They all can get you out. I can't tell you how many times, we had to, on the fly, build a E2 or a Spider preset. Right. Because all of a sudden they want this, this, and this, and you want it now? Fine. Yeah. Hi.
Let's do this now.
We're going to build a new preset in the background.
Right.
And, if you have, the crew that can do that, it's easy.
It's easy. And it's a pleasure.
And a pleasure.
And of course, do you work with many new people these days?
Yeah, I'm actually working with a lot of new people, young people coming up because of, some of the technology is advancing. Mm-hmm. But Yeah, I find it's sort of a 50-50 of the same, of my buds that I know for 1,000 years,
Right.
and we don't have to talk. I mean, literally, they're a step ahead of me, which I love.
Right.
Because I don't, let them help me, and I will, help them with the information that's coming. And then you've got some new guys that are just, crackerjack. They're into it, they're dedicated, they care. I mean, for me, the crew is the most important thing. They're my lifeline.
Sure.
And if a lot of times, everyone says, "Oh, Rob, great show, producer, director, something come up, blah, blah." But when a crew guy comes up to me or a crew girl and says, "You call a hell of a show, and it's a pleasure working with you," that means more to me than anything else.
Pure respect.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
exactly.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. Now, and you mentioned someone I haven't heard a lot of, that you see a lot of younger people coming up. I don't see that many younger people coming up, and I think it's hard to find them and get them, because nobody knows about our business.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest problem. And people stumble into it when they get into it. So how can we fix that problem? How do you bring people
I'm
in?
seeing it. I'm seeing a lot with deck managers.
Sure.
So many of the deck managers that I've used over the years have grown, have blossomed, and have become great show callers.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is, I'm thrilled for them. I mean, I'm proud. I'm proud because maybe they got a little bit from me that, helped them move forward. And what's happening is, I'm not getting deck managers. So there are a lot of people that are starting, especially in New York now, of learning about this industry. And they'll come from theater. Most of them come from theater, which is what you want, because the theatrical background, I feel, for this industry is the strongest.
Right.
And they come from theater, and they just have to, someone has to give them their first shot. And then someone says to me, "Oh, I've got this person, she's young, but, she's crackerjack smart, and let her come in on a show." And if I have an opportunity to bring them in as a second or a third and have them work under some of the great deck managers that, I'm still having the opportunity to work with. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sort of lucky that a lot of the deck managers that I work with that are now doing their own stuff calling will still come down and say, "Oh, for you? Sure." I'll come down. Absolutely. I'm good for a week of fun and don't have the pressure. So, But then I can bring in some new people. I've been getting recently a lot of people calling me. So-and-so recommended them, so-and-so recommended them.
Right.
When I was trying to get into this business a long time ago, it's when you used to write letters.
Oh, yeah.
And I would write letters, I would send them out to all these stage managers and stuff. Zippo. I don't think I ever got a response. And I said to myself back then that if I'm ever in the position to be able to, give somebody some advice or at least, talk to them, I would. And I don't care who it is. If somebody recommends them and they send me their name, or, I've heard about this industry and I'm thinking about, they get an email, if I can get a call with them, if I can even, have an opportunity to meet with them in person, it's my pleasure.
Yeah. Well,
it's how I find young talent.
That's right. And you're talking about mentorship. You're talking about mentoring younger people and sharing your knowledge and experience to develop them. And that's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's great. And you talk about experience and where we've been and the things that are stuck in our brains that we've almost forgotten sometimes. And it takes me back to the years of COVID a few years ago when we all lost a year's worth of business. on a phone call, right? And then the week after that happened, I got a call that said, "Oh, everybody is rebooking things because we're going to do this thing called virtual shows."
When the pandemic first hit, I was sort of enjoying, because I lucked out. I was one of the lucky ones that I got some cancellation fees. So I didn't have to, it wasn't like every show got canceled, and, the ones that were coming up in the next month or the next week, people were kind enough to pay cancellation fees, because they could have just said, "Oh, it's a pandemic," act of God.
Right.
But yeah, I was enjoying being home. I was enjoying doing work in house. One of the things that I actually did, which was so much fun, was all my old VHS tapes from all the shows in the 80s and 90s. I digitized them.
Wow,
and now they are sitting on my computer. That people say, "Gee, I wonder what those shows were like that you did." Let me show you what it was like. You want to see dancing hamburgers? You want to see executives flying? Come on, I got them.
You want trains breaking through walls? We got it.
But then a couple of my dear stage manager friends said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I don't want to try to learn something new right now." And, they said, "Just get off your you-know-what and go do it." They said, especially it's like doing a TV show. And you especially, all the experience I've had that, when I floor managed for you on shows, at the Pit at the Airy Crown. And, I have a lot of experience with broadcast, especially through some of the shows I've done over the years. So I said, "Okay, put my name out there." And a funny thing happened. My name was put out, and one of the producers said, "Oh, I love Rob. I can't wait. Rob is great."
Right.
How many of these has he done? Well, he's starting out now. "Oh, I can't have him on my show. I mean, how could I have someone that's never done this before on my show?" They love me, but not that much.
Yeah.
And but I got into it, and I started doing it, and I set up I got lucky. I got a PPE, whatever it is, loan, and I was able to buy some computers and upgrade my modem, and it was great. I'd get up at 2 in the morning and do a show in Hong Kong.
Right.
It was or we've got a remote from here or there, and it was great. So it helped me survive, and I'm very grateful to those stage managers who helped me, and a couple of producers who took the chance.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I set up in my house a 3-light system on my door: red, yellow, and green. And I had a little remote control, so when I would close my door, green meant come on in, you can work. Yellow means you could come in, but don't talk. And red means don't open the freaking door. So, and I would, it was remote, and I would do that because, with my kids at home at that point, because they weren't at school, and with my wife, where's this, where's that, and stuff. So I built that, but that was fun. But yeah, it was the same thing. I used to say, when the show is over, I had a much shorter walk to the airport lounge, and the bottles were bigger.
That's right.
So
all right, well, let's get into a couple of stories. I know we've got stories to tell. Tell me the funnest, is that a word? The most fun on a show.
The most fun I had on shows were shows that challenged me, that were exciting, and I had to, figure out things, and I was able to work with, great directors, great choreographers, and these were, mostly, in my beginning days with the cast shows.
Sure.
And I sit back, you had said earlier, you had things that you don't remember, or you don't use anymore. I've got a trunk at home of skill sets that I haven't used in 20 years.
Right.
That every now and then, I was doing a show, and the opening number was, was an opening thing with video and some performers and stuff like that, and it was supposed to run on code. Well, unfortunately, the morning of the show, something happened, and it wasn't working, and everyone's panicking, and how are we going to do that? I said, well, give me the code numbers and I'll call it. It's on time code.
Right.
I can read the time code. You can do that? It's like, yeah, I think I can do that. We rehearsed once or twice, and I fine-tuned some things on it, and voila, we did the show. But I remember, some of the really big cast shows that I was on, you were on a lot of them, and you were talking about the show that with the phone, and that's where I think I had a moment that got my career really off of the ground. We had a major star that was singing the theme song, and I'm calling all the deck moves and the flies, and I'm calling the lights. Spots were being called by the LD, the assistant LD. And so we came out of one number where there was this big neon drop of a phone with buttons and everything. And I called the fly cue to bring it out. It starts to move out. I call the cues to start to bring the wagons down. The entire orchestra's coming down with this major star.
I think we can name her.
Crystal Gale. Crystal Gale. Southwestern Belle.
Yeah, she was a charm.
She was delightful.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, the rag goes out about 12 feet and then gets stuck. What happened was someone had opened a door somewhere that wasn't supposed to be open, and the air pressure, it flew. Everything was so tight on the fly rail that it got caught on another thing. So immediately, I stopped everything moving, because Crystal Gale went under the rag, walked out, and started singing. And she's out there singing. I'm still calling what cues I can. And the producer came up to me and said, what's going on? And I said, it's rags. He said, aren't you concerned? Well, I said, right now, sir, I have a major celebrity on stage singing, and there are guys up in the rail there and up on the fly floor, a hell of a lot more experienced than me, that are going to figure this out, and as soon as it happens, we're going to go. If you want me to get upset, I can get upset, but I'm sort of busy right now, in a way. And they finally got it go. We got the rag out. We brought everything down. And, after the show, they said, you were very calm. And, we were very impressed with that. And that was it with that show. A couple of months later, I was going through Chicago with a children's theater show. So that was sort of the first or second industrial that I did. I'm coming through Chicago. I stopped at their office and met with them, and on my way out, one of the creative directors and producers says, we're doing a show for a small little hamburger company, and would you be interested? It's a tour. Would you be interested in doing it? And I said, I'd love to. And that moment right there, you talk about that moment where your life is changing. That's what happened, and that started me with the small little burger company that I've been with for 40 years. So it's moments like that. But we've all had. I know that in the one that you did with Andy Bew and Stacey Bew Johnson, you talked about. I was on that show where the lady. And I'm calling stuff through the walkie-talkie, and she's driving the car incident, and I'm talking, there, and, I'm cueing the drivers, and I cue her out, the turntable opens, she comes out, it does its spin, and then she's supposed to drive down to the end turntable, and I'm about to spin the turntable. And she's coming, and as I got it out of my mouth, stop! She went off of the stage with the prototype car. So there's moments like that where you can fix things and make them work, and they were able to through the genius of Roy Sears.
Yeah.
We were able to get the prototype car back out on the stage, and it worked, and we teched it, and then all of the detailers came, and the next morning they did the best. They did the best they could do, considering it was made mostly out of wood.
You're right.
And stuff. But there's millions of stories of people going up, and then there's sometimes the reverse end, where I was doing a show here in Orlando, right across the street at the old convention center, and we rehearsed the CEO the night before, and I had known him for many years, and on his way back he walked by control and said, "Rob, how do you think I did?" And I said, "Just be yourself. You know that. Be yourself and you've got it."
Right.
And he walked off. Next morning we all come to work, and there's security guards everywhere, and they're not letting us into the building. And finally, our clients came down.
This hotel.
I was staying at this hotel.
Yeah, me too.
And the clients came out and said, "You guys can come into the ballroom, but the show's canceled, but we can't give you any information."
Right.
And having been with this company long enough, I knew it was one of two things. Either, the chairman emeritus had passed away, or something happened to the CEO,
Right.
which it was. He passed away with a heart attack in the middle of the night. And they were lucky that the board of directors was there for the meeting, so they immediately put their contingency plan into effect.
Right.
And
elected a new board or president.
Exactly. And we were finally able, we pulled out the old board and the Post-its and started to redo the show, because the first show was going to be sort of a memorial.
Right.
And then we had to change things around, and everyone was working together, and the Post-its were going.
I was there.
You were there. You remember.
Let me tell you, I'll add a little bit to the story. When he rehearsed that speech that he was going to give the next day, I said to my guys, "We should record this. Just do the test record." So we recorded that speech. And then on the show I'm doing now, in the very same building, I was having coffee the other morning, talking to one of the old stagehands that's working on the show, and he told me the same story about a show here where the CEO died. And I said, I was there too.
Yeah.
40 years later, I ran into this guy.
I have the script in my house.
Do you really?
Yeah, I've scanned in. That's what I recently bought, a new scanner, and I've been, just scanning in, because we're trying to clear out the house a little bit, and I scanned in. I mean, I had scripts from 20, 30, 40 years ago that I don't know why I need them, but I got a great scanner, and it just went. And now I have all these files, and one of the files that I had was his script with my notes from rehearsal and stuff. And then there was some other things that happened around with this hotel, but I don't think we want to go there at that point. It was an interesting couple of days.
It was, wasn't it? All right, so where's the business going?
Where's the business going? The business seems to be going that there are a lot of meetings going on, but they're more last minute, more cut down, where, I can't remember the last time I did a show with like a lot of theatrical scenery. It's, it's LEDs, and a lot of the shows are just a wall, and gorgeous design by the video designers and the graphic designers and the producers. And then, sometimes I get, I'm known, I like to move things.
Right.
I'm very big on moving things, and I'll tell you a story about that in a second. But when you're able to get panels that, you're in an arena and you can fly panels and move, and they go up and thing and stuff, it's great. I'm doing a show, and we had a lot of really great scenery. We're in an arena, and we have a thing where the wall opens and this wagon comes down with the product and everything, and I'm fine tuning. I mean, I want to get it to like a millimeter, as the doors open, it comes down, and our TD comes over and puts his arm around me and goes, "Rob, it's a freaking industrial. It ain't Broadway."
Just get it downstage.
Right, just get the freaking wagon downstage. So, voila.
I know. And the technology has changed so much
Oh.
that it's so much electronics
Yeah.
now, computer-driven things, that we never heard of before.
Right, I mean, I remember when beta tape first came out, and we had the beta cam machines,
Right.
and you could actually cue a tape so that when you hit the button, you didn't have to have 2 to 4 seconds of pre-roll from 2" down to 3/4.
Boy. Yeah.
And trays on one.
Yeah.
That's for anyone old enough will remember that.
They'll remember that. They'll all remember that. Well,
But
I think this has been, for me, such a trip down memory lane with you and old friends, and we could sit here for hours and do it. But I don't want to occupy the audience that long. I promised I would keep these to half hour, 35 minutes or so, and we could go on forever.
Yeah.
But what I do want to say, it's great catching up with you, and it's so nice to see you. You got great stories, and you're a friend for life.
Yeah, and same here. I mean, we got ourselves together on a couple of first shows
Right.
early on, and did a lot of stuff.
We were just
And
kids.
we were kids, and now our kids are, at least your kids are having
Yeah.
kids. My kids not so fast yet.
Give it a minute.
Give them a day or two.
Yeah.
And no, thank you. I mean, when I saw the one that you did, I said, oh God, I would love to do that, and you were gracious
you're great
enough.
at it.
You were gracious enough to come tell me.
You're a good get, they say.
Yeah, a pleasure.